We're doing this a little bit different, but that's okay. Great shows come from making it happen when you have to. So we're going to start this show right now.
Spirits and More Radio.
Like touch my shoulder, touch my hair.
Starts now.
And I said, what the hell is that?
Spirits and More Radio starts now.
And welcome to Spirits and More Radio, you guys. We're super excited to be doing this show. We are aboard the Queen Mary, one of the most haunted ships probably of all time. And we haven't done a show in a while. We've got Ace Jordan here who has been on these shows, and we've all been running here doing cool stuff. We've got Erik Vanlier here, my very first guest on Spirits and More Radio. And we're on the Queen Mary, and we're here for a special reason because we came tonight to check out a really cool show that has to do with paranormal and hauntings and involved a seance and everything. And so we'll get to that, but we just wanted to real quickly, Ace, say hello and tell us a little bit about the Queen Mary, real brief, just to give people a little history there.
Do you know what year it went to service off the top of my head? I know it was a transport ship during World War II.
At one point, yeah.
And there's been 57 people over the years that have died on this ship. And that's where the show came from.
That's where the show came from. And Erik, you know what? I know you've been on this ship and you've investigated here. Erik does these investigations, and so we've actually got a meter. Ace brought a little meter. It's on the table, so this is an unofficial investigation here in a special place on the ship. But Erik, is there any brief encounters on this ship or stories that you think people should know that you've encountered?
Yeah, I've done quite a few investigations on this ship. Had some different experiences. The one that's been sticking out a little bit was when I was with Rob Rudowski, who's written a lot of books on SoCal hauntings, and he actually did a book on Queen Mary, and Gerald Reynolds, rest in peace. I was investigating with them once. I think Victoria Gross was here from San Diego. You might know her. Sarah was indenting my cheek, actually, in the boiler room, and then I don't think it was anything malicious, but she pushed me down the stairs, and I think Rob might have gotten that on camera. But I'm not. I just want to say one thing real quick. I'm not saying it just because you two guys are sitting here. I actually wasn't going to come to this event. I had the opportunity to, and then Steve invited me, and I'm not an emotional person. This has been a really emotional night. I just want to thank you guys, because you don't know how important, I don't care if it's hocus pocus or what it is, if there's ghosts, demons, whatever it is, whatever you guys did tonight, you with answering some questions that haven't been answered in years, you with what you did, was able to get in touch with some people. I think tonight was the most important night I've had on this ship, and I'm not an emotional, I'm an empath who's not emotional. But Steve saw my reactions during the show, and you saw my reaction when I was talking to you earlier, so.
I'm very thankful that you were able to have that experience tonight. That's the thing that makes this really special, is people come from different reasons and different expectations, and I think a lot of times people come expecting to be scared, and instead people leave crying. People leave with very emotional responses to Michael's work. So I'm glad that you were able to experience that and see it for what it is, So I'm glad you had that.
And that mysterious voice you just heard. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to introduce the producer of this show, director, the brainchild behind it. This 57 Ghost Show, you guys, is here on the Queen Mary. It's not the first thing that this team has done here. Aiden Sinclair is with us, and Michael, I'm sorry, pronounce your last name?
Rangel.
Michael Rangel is with us. So first, Aidan, can you just give us a brief rundown? I want to point one thing out. So there's you'll run into Aiden on TV. You've been on lots of TV shows and performed magic. There's 3 of us at this table who are magicians, and so it's kind of there's 5 of us sitting at this table, you guys. But anyway, it's kind of cool to sit here because we all have like the same passions for entertainment and, you know, looking beyond the norm to try and understand this world we're in. But Aiden has a good story, and just real briefly, I think for anyone who's out there, his is one of perseverance and new beginnings and doing the great things with your life. And so, Aiden, why don't you just give us a brief background on yourself, some of the TV shows you've been on, and then, you know, we'll get to Michael, and Michael will have the opportunity to share your side of things.
Well, I started in life on a pretty bad road and got in a lot of trouble in my life and found myself doing time. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I found magic in prison, where most magicians, if you ask them how they started in magic, it's like, oh, my uncle gave me a magic set when I was 5, and that's it. They get intrigued with the trickery of it. For me, it was more initially about something to occupy time, but it was also finding something that creatively I was good at. And as I started to perform magic, then it was what type of magic spoke to me. And initially, I started off doing, you know, card tricks and coin tricks and things that every magician does behind the bar. And one of my regulars, when I got out of prison, I was doing magic as a bartender. And one of my regulars came in one night, and she was the director of a safe house for domestic violence. And she asked me if I would go to a kind of a promotional event that they were doing, a fundraiser, as a celebrity bartender to do magic, you know, and help them raise awareness for domestic violence. And I immediately was like, absolutely, that's a great cause. I will absolutely do that. And then I went home that night and I sat down with a glass of Jameson and started thinking about it and realized that magic generally takes people away from reality. We make people forget things. And they were trying to raise awareness for something. So it seemed counterintuitive for me. I didn't think that I should go do something where I was going to make people forget while they were there. Here's a distraction from the horrible. So the next morning, I called her and I was like, hey, instead of doing that, how about I write a show and we put it in this theater, and whatever the show makes, you guys take. I ended up writing a show about an insane asylum. And it was really about what it was like to be committed in an asylum in the late 1800s in England. And the asylum was real and all the history was real. And in that show, there was only one magic trick, which was a straitjacket escape. But it wasn't performed by me. I had an assistant that came forward, and she very sadly would hold out her arms, and I got the biggest, you know, buffest guy in the room to put her in a straitjacket. And once she was all locked in, she kind of just slunked off to the side of the stage and sat down. And then I went back into telling my story. A few minutes go by, and I realized that the audience has completely forgotten about this girl. And we finished the whole show, and she's still sitting right in front of them in a straitjacket, but all the attention was on me. And the very last thing we showed was a slide, you know, came up, and it showed this asylum today, and this place where these horrible, horrible things happened. And today there's BMWs and Aston Martins and Rolls-Royce parked in front of it. Today the place is called Princess Park Manor, and it's like the most expensive piece of real estate in England. Wow. Madonna has a flat there. It's this kind of place. Yeah. And I looked at the audience. I said, this is what this place is today. And this place that was once horrible has become something wonderful because of social advocacy. Nice. Because people spoke out. Right. And people wanted their sisters and their daughters back. Yeah. And because of that, that asylum closed because of advocacy. Yeah. And I looked at the audience. I said, now many of you after this show are going to ask me if everything I've told you is true. How could all of those women who were committed there, how can all these horrible things have been forgotten? And I let that hang for a moment. I looked at the audience and said, how many of you have forgotten the girl in a straitjacket sitting right in front of you? Wow. And in that moment, you know, some music came up, and this girl stood up and fought her way out of that straitjacket and threw it down and walks out without saying anything. Wow. Well, as a magician, you're like, ta-da! Yeah, you know, she got out of the straitjacket. There's, right. And I looked at the audience. I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And to a magician, that is an applause cue. You know, something magical happened. This is where you all clap. And there was no clapping. People were crying. People looked guilty because everybody in the room had forgotten the girl in the straitjacket. And everybody in that room knew why they were there, which was there's some really horrible stuff in this world, and the fact that I could donate $10 might change that. It might help a woman like that.
Right.
So after doing that show, it was so emotionally powerful. How do I go back and do card tricks behind a bar? All of it just felt really trivial.
Right.
So it changed the direction of the magic. And at that time, I had a lot of friends in the paranormal world, TV ghost hunter people who were famous. And I started going to these paranormal events and doing shows for them. And initially, it was that show. It was this show about domestic violence where one thing happens, but it was spooky and weird.
Yeah.
And I found that I started meeting spooky and weird people, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
You know, they were my people. Yeah. And the more I was around the paranormal, the more I got really interested about it, and the more I started structuring the shows I did to be in that realm. Right. And the longer I did it, the more the shows evolved until they became something more of a paranormal presentation than a magic show, right. To where the shows become more emotional, and it's not about trickery, it's about connection and not deception.
Right.
So through that, we grew over time, and was able to go from performer to producer, right. To where so many people liked the show that there became more of a demand than I could do. So then we started seeking out other magicians that could do the same. And how do you do that is you don't hire magicians, you hire really good storytellers.
Right.
And people that have an amazing life that they can put part of themselves into the show.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to find. So we were very lucky, and we found Michael when we came back here to the Queen and started
Michael,
this.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well? You're the star of the show. So everyone understands this is a two-part sort of thing. You get some history about the show, or about the boat, and the foundation for what this is about, and then you come into the room and meet Michael, and Michael sort of guides the rest of the evening. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, and this show, and what it means to you.
Well, much like Aiden, I'm a magician. I've been doing magic for 42 years and doing it professionally for 24. And I did card tricks and coin tricks, and some time ago, I found myself incredibly ill. Very sick. I was ill of spirit, ill of body, ill of mind, and I'd lost hope and faith in everything and everybody, including my beloved magic. And at that darkest moment, a miracle occurred, and it came in the most humblest of forms. It came in the form of a friend. And it was through this friend's kindness and compassion and love and generosity and patience that they taught me to believe in magic again. And I got booked to perform at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I hadn't performed since I was sick. I took a year off. And I didn't want to just go back and do card tricks and tell stupid jokes. And if I was going to have these be my last shows, if my illness came back and I was going to pass away, I wanted to say something. So I started changing everything in how I approached magic, and it became more important for me to say something, and magic was just the paintbrush, the paint, the canvas, the tools, the instruments. And what was more important was what I wanted to say with the magic. And so I started forming my show Luminar, which is my one-man show that I was doing for many years. And it was storytelling based, much like Aiden's experience, a little bit different. And that's how I approached magic from that point on, very much storytelling, talking about things that were important to me. You know, things like the power of serendipity and how two people could be drawn together and fall in love. And they live at opposite ends of the globe. Destiny. You know, do we have power over our own path, or is it predetermined? Kindness, compassion, how we're all connected, how there really is real magic in the world. It's not really a trick when you really think about it. You can be as skeptical as you want, but when that hits you like a lightning bolt, those moments of inspiration, you have no answer for it.
Right.
Just like falling in love, you have no answer for it. You're humbled. You're brought to your knees by your soulmate. And so the same thing is with the supernatural, you know? When you could be as skeptical as you want to be, but when you hit with that thunderbolt, you're brought to your knees and you have no answer for it. So Aiden saw my show and approached me and flew me out to Colorado, and I stayed with him for about 4 days, and we talked and we talked and we talked some more. And then he asked me if I wanted to do this. And he had his theater on here for like 5 years before the pandemic shut it down. And he let me know he was going to open it up again, and if I would be interested in doing the seance. And he said he would like me to curate the seance and make it personal. And I said, okay. So it took some time. It took some time before that happened. And I'd never done any type of spooky type of magic, but I've been very much drawn to darker things all my life, as you heard earlier. So it just kind of was like a natural transition for me. And coming aboard the ship, as we started to work, not to give too much away, but I found that there was a serendipitous type of moment where this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Like a lightning bolt bringing you to your knees. And it's very humbling, and I'm blessed to be here, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to come in and do this for people and share these incredibly intimate moments with people. Like it's not a spook show. It's not like where you're gonna have fluorescent ghosts being drawn across the ceiling by wires. They're not gonna be puffs of air coming out from your seat or anything like that. You know, it's deep.
Yeah, it really seems like it. And I think that's a really good point is, I think anyone listening to this recording can kind of grasp the passion behind what's happening here. And, you know, there's so many things that you go to, and it's a produced show, and, you know, of course everyone wants to be entertained, but, you know, what's happening here has such deeper levels to it. And I think it's great that you guys give that of yourself to people. I think that any passion, such as we're talking about magic, but any kind of art form, this is like an art form too, you know? And so I wanted to ask you, Aiden, real quickly, and then I know Ace has some things he wants to talk about as well. Can you explain to us, this is a theatrical production, this is a theatrical experience. So if you could touch upon what that means for the audience and where those lines are.
Yeah. The thing that makes 57 Ghosts really special, as well as like the seance we produced at the Stanley 13, is that we try to be very clear when we advertise. We're like, this is a theatrical seance. And a lot of people go, what does that mean? There is a script to a sense of it. It is a written show and structured. We've created the space. And there are moments of magic in the show because we use the techniques of fraud mediums from the 1890s to make some things happen. But we perform these things in a place that is historically haunted, like here, the Stanley, the Winchester Mystery House, which has its own history, its own thing that goes on. And in the writing of that show, we leave a lot open for just synchronicities, for life, for choices. And all those choices are made by audience members that are completely outside of our control. We actually do 2 or 3 paranormal experiments in the show that are legitimate paranormal experiment. It's literally us going, wonder what the fuck will happen. And we just do it.
Right.
And things happen. And what's funny is people end up leaving the experience, both with my shows, Hannibal at 13 at the Stanley, and Michael. It's amazing to me that every night people will leave here and the things that they think were tricks that they've perceived as like, that was a great trick. You're like, we didn't do that. that was actually real. We didn't, that right. Just happened. And the things that they think are real were probably tricks, which is amazing to me. We have done this long enough that my staff at the theater at the Stanley, we kind of joke around that every night there are two shows that happen. There's the show that the audience sees, and there's the show that we see.
I see.
Because we see all the things that happen that we didn't intend to happen or
Right.
didn't plan. Like
And
tonight.
For people who don't know, you said the Stanley.
The-
Fill the audience in with the Stanley.
So I actually started doing this type of work at the historic Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado.
Which is known
it's
for-
the famous Shining Hotel.
From the movie The Shining.
Correct. Stephen
Right.
King stayed there, and yeah, yeah, it's the novel. It inspired him to write the story. He had a nightmare while he was there, and smoked a cigarette after that nightmare. And he would later say in life that by the time the cigarette was done, the bones of the story was in his mind.
Wow.
So the hotel is famous for The Shining. It's been around for 114 years, though. It had amazing history before Stephen King, and it continues to have amazing history today. But that was the first place I created a theatrical seance for, and it became very successful there and evolutionary. Like, I get bored as a performer, so I would change the show about every 6 months and basically throw it all in the trash and start again. Because that's just, I think artistically for me, I have to do that. Like, I get bored. But in 2018, I had the opportunity to bring the show here to the Queen Mary, and I was also had an opportunity to do another project in LA that I had to be in LA for. So it was heartbreaking because I had to go to the Stanley and go like, hey, I got to go to LA. It's LA. I got to go.
Yeah.
And the owner of the hotel basically said, well, if you're not going to do a show here, then nobody is. And I left and opened the room here on the Queen Mary. And at that point, I was just a performer doing my thing. And it was me and my fiance kind of holding down the door, and that was it. And after a while of being here at this, about a year, the Stanley called me back, and they're like, hey, we'd kind of like you to come back. So I can't be in two places at once. So I kind of made an agreement with the Stanley that I would produce a show for them. I'd hire another magician to do the show, but I would come back once a month. And that allowed us to fly that magician out here. They'd be a guest on the Queen Mary. I would go do that.
Right.
And suddenly we were producing another magician in that way, or hiring different magicians at different times. And then the Stanley owner came and saw me and was like, hey, we'd like to build an actual theater for you.
Wow.
But you need to come back and give us more time. And at that point, the pandemic happened. The Queen Mary closed. And I think the pandemic affected all of us in the same way that initially everybody was like, oh, it's going to be 6 weeks, and then we'll all stay home for a month. It'll be cool. We're going to play some Animal Crossing and go back to our lives.
Right.
But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And every day that the world was closed, it affected different things in different ways. And in the case of the Queen Mary, 6 weeks turned into 3 years.
Yeah.
So, and that was a really harsh reality for us as a business, because I couldn't perform here. So we had the opportunity to go back to the Stanley, open this theater, but that also had a negative consequence. There was a magician that worked for us. They don't have a job now.
Right.
Because I can't pay somebody else to do my show when I'm doing my show.
Right.
And that was heartbreaking, because it was our first time to have employees and staff and people that are relying on you for their livelihood.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have to go, I'm sorry, the world sucks, and there's no money. We can't do it. The upside of that, though, is that the theater we opened became so successful that it was a bigger operation. And suddenly it was impossible to run the theater with just one person. So one person turned into two, and then two turned into four. And then the show schedule expanded. And then it was, well, let's add a seance show. And that became so popular, I couldn't do both shows at the same time.
Right.
So now our theater at the Stanley Hotel, over the summer, it contracts 16 of the world's finest magicians.
Wow.
They'll come out, do 2 weeks, and rotate, so the people that are local get to see all this variety all of a sudden. And we hired Hannibal to be our full-time seance performer there. And he's doing 5 shows a night there. And then the opportunity to come back to the Queen opened up. And the seance was the easiest way to get open quickly. It's a very intimate affair. There's never more than 24 people at a show. So that's very powerful to me, that everybody's got a seat at the table, everybody's in the front row, everybody has the potential to interact with Michael. The tricky part, though, was as soon as we started thinking about this, of like, how do we, there's millions of magicians. There's not as many good ones, So that narrows it down.
Right.
There's lots of magicians that have an amazing 20 minutes.
Right.
Not a lot of magicians can do 90. And then the other side of it is most magicians, when they do magic, it's not about the audience, it's really about them.
Right.
There's a lot of ego, there's a lot of look at me, look at what I can do, I fooled you.
Right.
I personally don't like to be fooled. I think that can be put offish for some people, and it's why so many people are like, I hate magic, I hate magicians. And then we went and saw Michael.
Do they really hate us? I didn't realize
There's
that.
some hate. There's some hate. I promise you. There's some
I
hate.
know I've been at the Magic Castle, everybody hushed up about some things
Yeah.
they were talking about. I'm like,
Yeah, there's
okay,
some
I see
hate.
how this is, you guys.
And I put some of that hate in the world. I'll be honest with you, because I see a lot of bad magic, and when you see bad magic, you're like, that hurts everybody.
Yeah. Now,
You know.
you were able to, and Ace, jump in here if you have, and Eric too, if you guys are thinking stuff. I don't want to take the whole time. Okay. So Ace has brought a meter. Ace, tell everybody what we're seeing here.
Well, I brought a K2 meter that's been running the whole time that we've been recording. And particularly when Michael, were you talking about your backstory and things that you were particularly passionate about. And I remember at one time you said magic, you said it a little bit louder than anything. We got some spikes. It was almost like you were affecting the energy in the room. And also when Aiden was speaking, we got quite a few spikes, but I haven't really figured out a pattern as to why. But it definitely seemed like when you got more passionate about what you were talking about, Michael, we were getting, oh, there we go. You know, sometimes it's random. I just wanted to point out that the energy seemed to be changing in the room a little bit.
Yeah, and that is, we get into the show and there's a lot of passion here about what's going on, but I think a lot of you guys as listeners, you're excited about the paranormal. And so coming here is an opportunity to have an experience like that. But at its core, I think we're all excited about that. So I have a question for you guys, and I know our time we're up to time, but we're having a good time. So it's whatever you guys want to do, we're doing. Yeah. Okay. So if each of you could please share the first time that you had some experience that was unexplainable, that sort of changed your perception, that you said, maybe I don't fully get what's going on around me. So if there's been a moment like that for you, not necessarily on the ship. I'm not talking about the production of this show. I'm talking about if there was a time, when was that time?
I think we've both had those experiences, and that honestly made me just embrace the paranormal a lot more. The first was I got hired by a paranormal tour company called Strange Escapes. It's Amy Bruni's company from Kindred Spirits. She does that show. Okay. When she's not doing a show, she has a company that they go to haunt locations, and they do really great panels. Like John Tenney's usually a part of it. Okay. So it's a great Q&A for people who want to know what it's like to investigate the paranormal. And they have a very empathic approach to it, which is humbling to watch. It's not the come at me ghost, right. thing. So I go out, and Amy reached out to me and basically hired me to be the entertainment for these things. So you would go ghost hunting one night, and you'd see a show the next night.
Okay.
So, and what I do fits with that. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
So we go out to this place called Belvoir Winery in Kansas. It's in Liberty, Missouri, right by Kansas City. And we go out, and I'm magician. I'm super skeptical. Amy's a friend. All these other people that are there are friends. And they'd had paranormal experiences, and I believe my friend.
Yes.
So just because I didn't have that experience, I trust them, and I know that they experienced something. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a ghost or what, but they're my friends. Yeah. So now I go out to this thing, and they were short a person to kind of chaperone the ghost hunting. And they were like, hey, can you go on the investigation? Okay. As like an adult in the room, basically. And I was like, I don't know anything about that. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Yeah. And they're like, don't worry, you don't have to know anything. Just go and make sure nobody falls down. Make sure nobody trips. So they paired me up with Dave Schrader, very well-known paranormal guy. He does the Coast to Coast sometimes. Oh, okay. He hosts that show. Yeah. So I'm with Dave, and my first paranormal experience actually was with a K2. We go down into this morgue. The Belvoir Winery was originally an Oddfellows home, so they have a hospital and a morgue. And we go down into the morgue, and there's this little girl that's maybe 12 or 13, And we walk in, and she sees Dave, and she goes, "Mr. Schrader, I'm talking to a little boy." And Dave's really skeptical about it. He's like, "How do you know? What makes you say that?" And he was like, "Well, we've got the K2, and we're getting interactions from the K2." And what was brilliant is these people had laid out 3 K2 meters just exactly like that, but within like inches of each other. Okay. So the little girl goes, "Show Mr. Schrader you're here," and all of them spike up to red. They all fire off. And Schrader goes, "Well, look, I gotta be honest with you. You know, there's a lot of people here. People have their cell phones on. If somebody just got a text message, that's what they do. They pick up radio signals. So if somebody just got an email, of course they're all going to light up like that. That's what they do." So she goes, "Oh, that's a good point." And then she goes, "Can you just touch the one on the right?" And the 3 K2 meters laying right next to him. Yeah. The one on the right spikes all the way to red, and the other 2 do nothing. Wow. Now, I don't know, at that point, I don't know much about ghost hunting, but I know how a K2 meter works, and they don't do that. What if that was a radio signal? It should fire off all 3.
Absolutely.
There's no way that does that.
Right.
So she was, and this little girl goes, "Good job, thank you for doing that. Would you touch the one on the left?" And then that one spiked to the red. She was like, "Thank you. Would you touch the one in the middle?" That spikes up to the red. Wow. And I look at Dave Schrader, and I just got to look at him, and I go, "Well," and he looks at me and he goes, "I got nothing." And that was my first kind of like, and it bothered me because it was, I know the science of it. Yes. I know the mechanics of it. I know what makes that machine work. Right. And that was not normal. It's not. Now, can I go, "That was a ghost"? No. I don't know what that was. Yeah. I have no idea. Was it a ghost? Was it a parallel universe? Was it
her able to somehow? Yeah.
I don't know. But
Transparency right here.
but it's not normal.
Right.
And that shouldn't happen.
Right.
And I could be a magician and go like, "It's just a coincidence," or I could go, "That was cool, and I'm really curious."
Yes.
And that's what started it. But I have now spent 12 years of my life working every day in a historically haunted place. And I have seen things that I have no explanation for. None.
Wow. Wow.
And that just makes me more curious about what happens. And I know Michael's had his own.
Yeah, Michael, tell us about your first, that moment when you said, "Wow, what's going on here?"
You know, it goes back to when I was a young boy, and I touch upon that time period in 57 Ghosts. And it goes all the way back to, I think, my first experience with shadow people. Uh-huh. Or people might know it as night terrors or sleep paralysis. Uh-huh. If you go on to Netflix, I believe, has it, a wonderful documentary on shadow people called The Nightmare. And you could watch it, and it details to great extents what it's like to experience those phenomena. I experienced it all. All of it.
Yeah.
Throughout my youth and into my adult years. But I remember the first few times waking up with people in your room and not being able to move and being paralyzed and having them with the red shiny eyes and the hat man and, you know, little ghoulish figures up in the corner. Yeah. You know, that's kind of the first time I started to experience anything type of supernatural or paranormal. And you'd think it would make me run away, but it didn't. It drew me in deeper.
Wow,
you know.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some fear. I mean, I remember my first experience, and I've talked about it on the show, but essentially going to the bathroom in the night with my girlfriend in the back bedroom, and the door was pushed. It wasn't blown. There was no window. It was not quite the slapping sound of a hand on the door, but the velocity of the hinges moving quickly and slowing down, and coming to the realization that nobody was in the house that could have done that. And when you mentioned shadow people, that's interesting because I didn't want to scare her at the time, so I said nothing. I just went into the bedroom and I said, "Did you go to the kitchen?" And she said, "No." Why? I said, "Oh, never mind. You know, I didn't want to scare her." And when we moved out a year later, she was sitting there. We were cleaning up the apartment to get our deposit back, and she was vacuuming, and she looks down the hallway towards that bathroom, and she just freezes while she's vacuuming. And I looked and I said, Sarah, what's up? And she shook her head out of like a daze, and she said, I just saw, it looked like a little man, like 4 feet tall, run from our bedroom to the bathroom, but dark, like you said, like a shadow figure. Anyway, we were moving out of there. So, but that was the first time anything happened to me that, and it's weird because it's, and I don't know if you feel this way of what you were describing, but it's almost like your mind doesn't want to believe what you're seeing because it doesn't fit what we believe to be reality. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, yeah. And Eric, you have...
Yeah, that's a good point that Steve is talking about. Aidan and I were talking about it. Everybody seems to know the Hotel Garden Grove case, but believing reality, when I first got there, I mean, we met at Portillo's and the client showed me the picture and I knew there was something wrong with the house. Little did I know 9 months later. But when I came out, and it wasn't even dark yet, when I came out of the what we called evil bathroom, and I don't think it was the lady that died of cancer. I think it was the mother of all demons, who I'm not going to say, with her black veil and Medusa kind of hair, standing as close as Aiden is to me. It was exactly like you said. It's like you don't want to believe it. And when we sat at the table, you know, we just had a recorder on and things mimic my voice. It said, I used to get scratched a lot. It said, I got scratched in my voice. I still didn't want to believe it. But when I saw that apparition of something that's not even supposed to exist, except in mythology, it's like I reacted out of fear, like out of a fight or flight response. And that's exactly how I said. You don't want to believe it. You almost can't believe it. To this day, I still, find it hard to believe things that I experienced. I'm not doing it that much. Hopefully, Ace, we go on some investigation soon. But when I experienced, the extraterrestrials in Buffalo, New York, and stuff at Iron Island and other places, it's maybe it's just me, but I find it hard to believe. Proving that Charman, an urban legend out of Ojai, proving with evidence that thing somehow is real. Yeah. It's like, how I know I did it with help from other people and stuff, or the hellhounds at Ojai Cemetery. It's hard to believe. That's oh man, you guys are trying to draw me back into the game.
Yeah, exactly. So, you guys, we could be here all night long. This is so much fun. I think we're all really enjoying this. It's been a long day. These guys have been performing and all that. But I wanted to circle back around to why we're here, the 57 Ghost Show. If you guys have the opportunity to see this show, or if you're closer to one of the other shows that Aiden has produced and put together, you got to come out. The passion behind these guys and what's happened is incredible. It's an incredible night out. It's a great thing to do. And this is year round kind of a thing going on. So it doesn't have to be around, a lot of people think this sort of thing is only as we get close to October and fall and that sort of thing. But you can do this. This is a good time, and bring your friends and tell people about this, because this is really good. This is a good thing to support and enjoy. Aiden, can you just tell people how they can get information on this show, your other shows, scheduling, tickets, all that great stuff?
You can experience 57 Ghosts on the Queen Mary. It runs right now Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, and tickets are available at 57ghost.com, and you can find us at 57 Ghost Show on all socials. If you're in Colorado, you can come see us at the Stanley, at Aiden Sinclair's Underground, or 13 at the Stanley as the Seance show, hosted by Hannibal at the Stanley Hotel. All of them are unique experiences, and what's great is, like, if you buy a ticket for the show, it also gives you access to the place. So here on the Queen Mary, that means, if you buy a ticket for an 8 o'clock show, you're more than welcome to come on the ship at 5 o'clock, wander, explore, see the ship, have some dinner, at the Chowder House, and really make a night of it. It's a good date night. It's a good night out. It's weird. It's strange. And Stuff's going to happen. Right. We don't know what, but it's always going to be powerful.
It's emotional.
And it's powerful for us to watch people leave this room every night with feelings. You know that people cry. Michael's able to connect people in a way that is very, very powerful. And it's also amazing to me that we're able to put something out that is not about the performer. It really is about the people that sit at the table. The 57 Ghosts experience is about you. I will say that a lot of times people will ask, well, you know, if it's a theatrical seance, can I come and talk to my grandmother? That is not what we do. The show is about this place. 13 at the Stanley is about the Stanley and the ghosts of the Stanley. We can't get you in touch with Grandma. We can't close those wounds for you. And we always kind of advise people that are seeking that service out. You know, a lot of people, when they suffer a loss, they want closure. Yes. And obviously that drives you to, you know, the potential for fraud mediums. I mean, there's people that will take advantage of you. So we always like to say to people that if you have lost somebody and you need to say something to them, you knew that person when they were alive. And you knew them better than me or Michael or Hannibal or any third party would. So if you have something to say to that person, go to the place that you feel the closest to them. Grandma's not here. She's not at the Queen Mary. She's probably sitting in her favorite recliner in that old living room, and go there. Don't go to her grave. Go to the place where you feel closest to that person and say what you need to say. Ask the questions you need to ask, and you will get the answers. And I always tell people that in the old days of Seance, in the Victorian age, the most commonly asked question was, are you in heaven? Because people were very religious, and if you believed in a place, you wanted to make sure they got there. Yes. Today, someone who is bereaved, the most common question that is asked of the departed is, are you proud of me? Yes. We all want that in life, that acceptance. But here's the kicker, is we live in a very different world generationally than even our parents did. The world has changed a lot just in the last 10 years. So if that is your question, and you need to know if your departed cared about you or was proud of you, you already know the answer. If you're living your life in such a way that would make them proud, then they're proud. But if you are doing something in your life that would make them ashamed, then there lies a second question. And that question is simple. Is the shame yours to carry, or is it that person's? You know, are you doing crack every day and robbing banks? Yeah, they're probably ashamed of that, and you should probably adjust your behavior. But are they ashamed of you because you're in a same-sex relationship? That's not your problem. That's their problem. That is their baggage, and they're the one that has to come to terms with that. That is their shame, not yours. So we encourage people to find that peace, and I find the best way to encourage them to do that is to ask the questions they need to ask to the people they need to ask them. Don't ask us. Don't come here for that. Yeah. We can't help you with that. Yeah. So.
Very powerful. Thank you so much, Aiden Sinclair. Lots of wisdom in there, and we appreciate your thoughtfulness and sharing that with people who need that. So thank you guys for listening to this show. We're signing out from the Queen Mary. What an incredible night. It's always exciting, and you never know what you're going to get. And this was a great show. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.